Okay, so let's get started, everyone. So welcome and thank you for joining us. It's great to see so many of you here to our Fundraising Fundamentals webinar. So I just want to start in the spirit of reconciliation. Schools Plus acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. So please take a moment to do the same for the people and nation where you are based all around Australia today. We're just going to take off some of the videos if you have a video on, and we have muted everyone as well. So we will be turning our video off after we've done our introduction. So welcome, and my name's Beth Gibbons and I am the School Operations Manager here at Schools Plus.
And I'm Melissa Simons. I'm the School Community Fundraising Officer here at Schools Plus. Welcome, we're so happy to have you here with us. So the purpose of our webinar today is to give you an overview of fundraising for your school. And we want to share with you some ways that you can move your fundraising beyond your school gate, beyond the cake stall, beyond the barbecue, the sausage sizzles, which we know they're not possible at the moment, and schools need a new way to fundraise, which is online and digital fundraising, which is what we love at the moment. And this is a way to secure funds for educational projects within your school and to support your students and teachers and your school community. So during our time together, we'll be discussing a bit about Schools Plus, who we are and what we do, and how we could help your school. Then we'll be moving into planning and creating a wonderful project for your school. Then we'll move into the hot topic of where to find funds, where you can look for donors and that kind of thing, and how to reach out to them. And then we'll dive into our very own crowdfunding platform called Fundraise Yourself. We will be talking about that in detail later on, but yeah, so a few logistics before we kick off. We'll be using a mixture of the slides and sharing our live Schools Plus website. So if at any point you can't see what we're talking about, give us a shout out in the chat. Speaking of the chat, you're probably all very familiar with Zoom by now, so you'll know where to find that. But give us a shout out, the school you're from today, and if you wanted to share any fundraising ideas that you have for your school, you know, maybe you're looking for a sensory garden or a STEM project or something like that that you would like to raise funds for. We'd love to know your ideas, and we want to make this as interactive as possible. So we've got one of our colleagues, Honor, in the chat, and she will be answering any questions that you have. If she can't answer them, then we'll jump in and answer them, or if it's a really great question, we'll jump in. And as Beth said, we've muted all the microphones and turned off the videos. So we're going to turn off our video now.
Cool. All right, great. So we've got a couple of people saying hi already. So hi Larissa and Donna, and I think Kate said hi before as well. And thank you as well to everyone who sent in your project ideas that you're hoping to raise funds for. So there was lots and lots of great ideas there and some real need across the schools. So thank you for sharing that. And we'll try and reference as many as we can as examples throughout today. So okay, so I'll just kick off and let's start with a little bit about Schools Plus. So if you're not familiar with who we are, Schools Plus is a national charity that works to help students facing disadvantage to succeed at school. So Schools Plus was established as one of the recommendations in the original Gonski Review, the 2011 Gonski Review, to make it simple, effective and tax deductible to donate to schools in need. So we empower schools to develop projects that improve student outcomes, such as through our crowdfunding platform, which we'll cover today, our Smart Giving and our Fair Education grant programs. So we've been in operation for 5 years, and over that 5 years we've directed just over $17.8 million into the education system, supporting over 750 schools and over 230,000 students. So some really good results there, and some really excellent support from our donors around Australia. So in terms of our support and the support that we can give to schools, we can support, there are 4,600 eligible schools for Schools Plus support, and we base this on an ICSEA value. So the ICSEA value, as you can see here on the slide, is the Index of Community Socio-Educational Advantage. So quite the mouthful. Then eligible schools must have an ICSEA below 1,000. So we've popped up the My School website there that you can jump onto and have a look to see if your school is eligible for Schools Plus support. But just making it clear, what we're going to cover today is for all schools, and we will focus on our service of the fundraising platform a little bit later, which is for our low ICSEA schools.
Yeah, and just to jump in quickly, if you are from a higher ICSEA school and maybe you've got a really great fundraising team and you know a school in a really remote location that might be low ICSEA that you'd like to raise funds for, you could try your hand at that. We've had a great example of a Perth school working with a really remote Indigenous school. They do a cultural exchange, which obviously this year it's not going ahead, but in the past they've had students visit from one school to the other. They swap their cultures, they learn together, they play together, they build friendships, and that project's been really successful. So just some food for thought there.
Yeah, so there's lots of options. So excuse me, the benefits of fundraising with Schools Plus. So we've got lots of opportunities here for support, and one of the main ones is our ability to provide tax deductible donation receipts for donations to schools. So we do have what's called a DGR1 status, a deductible gift recipient status, meaning that we can provide those tax receipts for donors wanting to donate to schools, which hasn't been able to happen before. We've also developed our Fundraise Yourself crowdfunding platform. So this enables you to connect outside of your school gate and into the broader community to receive tax deductible donations to your school, and we will cover that a little bit later. And we've developed lots of resources, and there is that support available to help grow your own philanthropy within your community and within your school. And the ability to learn from others. So obviously example is our webinar right now, and we'll have you all share with each other, but also there's lots of webinars that we host throughout the year, and we do have success stories and things like that on our website as well. So just to really touch on the Fundraise Yourself platform at this point, it is a platform that we developed in consultation with schools and parent associations, and it was designed specifically and only for schools and P&Cs to use. So it is a crowdfunding platform, and it is a school-led fundraising. So through the platform, once you register your project, you are given a unique web link that goes directly to your fundraising page that you can then share with your networks for those donations. On the page, you can really liven it up with photos and videos and share updates. It's free to use, it's really simple, and there's lots of tips and resources to help with your fundraising. And the lovely Melissa here is on standby to help set up those projects and support you with that fundraising as well.
Yeah, my background's community fundraising, so happy to help.
Alrighty, so let's move now into projects.
So our very first recommendation when a school comes to us wanting to fundraise is to get started on a plan. All the best fundraising campaigns, all the best grant applications, they all start with a plan. And it doesn't need to be a massive document. It can be just a Word doc that you've jotted down some ideas. We're going to present a very simple plan to you with 5 easy points that you can fill in, and you'll have a pretty great plan by the end of it. And a plan will also make it really easy for you to communicate your ideas with the wider school team, especially your principal. At the very beginning, you need the principal to be on board, to have his or her sign off. It won't go anywhere without the principal. So having a plan will be a great way to share it with them. And it also, if there's any turnover within the school, P&Cs have quite a bit of turnover, so you can pass this plan from one person to another quite easily. And we also have a planning document if you do decide to use our platform in the resources section, which I'll show you a bit later on.
So what we're going to just touch on now is just pulling out a couple of those key points from a larger project plan, and we've got a short version and a long version in the resources.
Yeah, and we even have a one-pager on there now, which is an editable PDF, which you can just pop your ideas down. Okay, so writing your project plan. So your project dates is a great place to start. Your project dates will encompass everything that is your project. So for example, if you're going to create a sensory garden, there are a lot of components of that. You'll need a contractor to come in and provide a quote. You need to decide what area that you want it to be in. You need to get all of this background information together before you even start thinking about fundraising, because you want to know how much you need to fundraise for. There might be a council approval or something like that you need. Then there's the then there's the fundraising period. Then there's the construction period, and then there's the celebration period when you're opening. Yes. So there's a lot of dates that will come into this kind of project. So map that out at the very beginning, so it might be pushed out, but it's a good thing to have at the beginning. And obviously the fundraising will not go for the entire project. You want to have the funds before the shovel hits the ground. You want to have it all there and ready to go. So that once you've got that ready, then have a think about what the purpose is and the beneficiaries. So there could be many reasons that you want a sensory garden in your school. It can be linked anyway to the curriculum, really. It could be for STEM education. There might be Indigenous plants or Indigenous space there for
food technology.
Food tech.
Yeah.
There might be students that need self-regulation or de-escalation in that area. There are many reasons. So have a think about what your primary reason is, and then maybe some supporting ones.
And why this project as well. So what's the purpose behind it? So, what's the challenge or opportunity within the school that this project's going to help meet that? And why is that the best bit? So having a think about that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then the beneficiaries, generally students and teachers are the beneficiaries of these kinds of projects, but it could also support the wider community. You might be inviting in your local community. So if it does have Indigenous program, you might be involving the elders or other schools or something like that to learn about the plants and things like that. So there could be a lot of beneficiaries of your project, so have a think
and be specific about that. So who is going to benefit? So that is number of students, parents or teachers, as well as if it's specific to a certain year grade, or it might be to a feeder school or across to something like that. So just listing out who's really going to benefit from it.
Yeah. And then your project description, this is where you'll pull everything from those two parts together and, explain here what you are raising money for. So in this case, you're raising money for a sensory garden and you're pulling in those other pieces of information that we've just mentioned. We'll go into project description a bit more detail in a few slides' time. Okay, what's the cost? So I can't stress this enough. You need to know how much you would like before you can start fundraising. we've had a few projects that have fallen short. You know, they've had a lot of energy, they've fundraised $5,000, and then they've come to realize that the project is actually going to be $7,000 or $8,000, and it's really hard to find the motivation and the energy to, you know, do that fundraising again. So if you have this plan ready to go, that's less likely. And have a think about what funding sources you have already. That could be through a grant, it could be through, you know, a crowdfunding platform like Schools Plus, or, you know, do you have existing funds within the school? This is where chatting to your principal is really beneficial. Or if you're within the school, maybe chatting to the PNC, seeing what funds they already have available for the project.
And by doing that as well, you know, sometimes once you cost out the project, the cost can be quite overwhelming of how much you've got to raise. So by chunking it down and already allocating different areas, it might help ease that that daunting process of thinking where you're going to find those funds, and enable you to celebrate those wins as they come in as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it might be a multi-year kind of fundraising activity. You know, you might do 10,000 one year, 10,000 the next. You know, you can phase it like that. It'll take a little bit longer, but much more achievable. And then the last part here is your team members, who's involved in the project, and that's everybody that's involved in the project, not just your fundraisers. So it's definitely your principal here. They might not be doing the fundraising, but they might have some good ideas of who you can contact with in the community. They might know of some alumni that might be, you know, interested in the school that you can communicate with. Your PNC members, community liaison officers, anybody that's involved, even, you know, suppliers that you might be calling in to help you with, you know, anyone in the local community that you might need support of.
That's right. So having this document with those things listed down does enable that ability to pass it on to someone, or if someone's asking what are you fundraising for at the moment, you've got a really clear plan. Okay. Alrighty, so telling your story. So you've got that the key sort of elements to your project plan, and now you want to think about telling your story. And we've put here three key parts to it, I suppose. So, you know, what do you want to do? Why is it important? And what will be the outcome for your students and or your school? So this will help you tell a succinct story and enable you to really narrow it down to you know, it could be a 30-second pitch, and that you're able to use at any point, whether it's talking to a potential donor, starting a grant application, talking to parents or people in the community. You're able to share that story really easily. So what do you want to do? So we've used the example here. We want to bring virtual reality into our classrooms. Why is it important? So it's giving here a little bit of context about the school. So it's located in a remote location, and it's for 150 students. So again, bringing in that project plan, thinking about your beneficiaries, that you're able to clearly say it's for X number of students, or it's for year 7 and 8, or it's, you know, whatever it might be. And then what will be the outcome for your students and or the school? So by getting the money, what is it that you're going to do with it? So we've said here that the funds raised will transform the classroom lessons, and they've listed out a couple of the lessons that will be involved, and also pulling in that part about technology skills, preparing students for jobs of the future. So, you know, just the three key questions just to get you started with writing out that, that story.
Okay, so moving into more of a fundraising context with how to kind of spell things out. You might like to use this when you're setting out a letter or an email or social media posts or something like that. So this is pulling the information from your plan into a fundraising activity. So you want to start with a little background and context about your school. So that could be, for example, you're a high school with 200 students, and you've got 4 feeder schools around you. So you can also say what state you're from, that kind of thing. And, you know, anything that will really be relevant to the fundraising activity. Then you can talk about if there's a problem or a challenge or an opportunity that's presented at the moment. So in this case, the high school has their enrollments have been decreasing, so they really want to engage with those 4 primary schools and engage with their year 6 students to encourage them to attend the school and also help with transition into year 7. So the way they're going to do that is they're going to set up a podcast radio program which they can involve the current students at their high school and bring in the students maybe once a week to be involved in this radio or podcast program. And that is going to be the mechanism that will help with the transition program and encouraging enrollments. It also could reduce anxiety of year 7 students, you know, getting them familiar with the high school, that kind of thing. And then talk about how the donor can actually support that process. You want to be really focused on the donor and how they can help raise, how they can bring this project into your school. And from the very beginning, you know, use words like your generous donation will do this, this, and this. You want the donor to be in the shoes of a student in your school, or the teachers in your school, that kind of thing. And then you can also add a little perk at the end. So with this project, you could say the key donors for this project, maybe they're a past student, they could come and chat on the radio program or the podcast, maybe share their career story or want to some information about themselves.
Yeah, great way to engage the donor back into their project.
Yeah, exactly. And with all projects that come through Schools Plus, all donations are tax deductible via our website. So if you're working with us, that can be another perk. You know, it's really nice, especially around tax time, to have a tax deductible donation in there. So have that as a perk in there as well. And as Beth said, with I lost my train of thought there. Okay, great. Now we're going to move into, we've got some examples from our website actually here. So we've got Ulladulla High and Chifley Public. So these are some great examples of bringing the donor and setting the context. So for example, the Ulladulla project here, their very first lines are, can you help us rise from the bushfire ash? So Ulladulla was impacted dramatically by the bushfires at the beginning of the year, and they were raising funds for a wellbeing hub. They've talked about the project and how the donor will be supporting. And then the next one here we have from Chifley High. From Chifley Primary, and they had a small project where they wanted to renovate their chicken coop, and they've really injected a lot of humour into their project. So that's they've called it their Chicken Run project, and you can see every line has a little pun. So don't be afraid to use a little bit of humour. It really engages people, and you know, you can
makes it stand out.
Yeah, especially on social media. You know, you want to showcase. You want attention on your project. So
yeah, and there's the 2 different project types there.
Yeah,
sending different messages.
So moving into how to find funds for your project. So we've talked about, so you've got everything ready, you know how much you need, and this is how you're going to find donors for your project. All right, so the first people that you might think of when you're thinking about a fundraising project would be your families, teachers, PNC and students, and we call this your school gate area. And we don't recommend having this group of people as your sole
source of donations.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've always said this, but especially now, there's so much financial burden on everyone in these kinds of communities that, the fundraising it's not going to go too well. So we recommend using these people as your advocates for the project. So really sharing the project with them, and asking them to share with their networks and that kind of thing. You can, if you're posting to social media, asking them to share. If you've got a school app, let them know about it that way.
Yeah, they're able to, let them be able to share on your behalf, or they might have lots of connections, but not necessarily asking them for financial support. So the next area, so moving outside of that school gate, is into your more local community. So thinking again, friends and colleagues might fit in under that same advocacy banner. So you might say to them, look, this is what we're doing, we'd love your support. Sporting groups might be doing some fundraising, school suppliers. So having a think about, and this is where the principal comes in as well, is having a think about who is supplying into the school. So who is the school paying? Is it, there's canteen supplies? Is it, stationery suppliers? Could you ask them for some support, whether that's in kind or financial?
Yeah, for example, back to that sensory garden example, if you've got a local landscaping company that has been in the area for years, they might know of your school and they might like to support by donating their time rather than funds. Also, to religious groups, we've had some generous donations from churches come through for wellbeing projects. So if they've got a connection to the school, if somebody is a member of the congregation within your school, maybe they can help you approach them.
Yeah, and I think at this level as well, it's really around that school connection and being a community, and supporting, these types of community connections, supporting your school, which is a community connector. So as we move outside the circle, then you would approach it differently. So with your local council and MP, this one is a really great example to approach. If you haven't already, go to your MP and talk to them about what you want to do in the school. More often than not, they have funds available that they will be able to donate to the school. So we've had some really great examples of MPs donating, $5,000, $10,000 to schools for really worthwhile projects. It enables that MP to go and visit the school, if appropriate, of course, or have a really great publicity opportunity for them. So please think about that and approach. And if they don't have the funding, we have had examples where MPs actually have lists of local grants that are available, and they could add you onto their mailing list, so you're getting those opportunities as they arrive.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I guess really getting that message out there through your local media. Maybe if you're doing a brainstorming session in your planning phase, have a think, maybe one of the students at your school, their parent works for the local radio station or the local newspaper. You could, let them know about the project. We've had a really great example of that. One of our South Australian schools, some of their students were nominated for an award and they needed to get to Melbourne for the award, and they just weren't able to fund that themselves. So the school did some fundraising for them. They wrote a media release for the local newspaper, and their local MP actually saw it in the newsletter, and they were able to get in contact with the school and donate some funds. And she went out to a visit, but not only did she donate funds, but she also communicated the project out, and the project ended up being fully funded by somebody that she knew. So it was a really great word of mouth. So you never know who's going to see a media release or a little post or something like that. So always you just need this project to get exponentially spread, and the more people that see it, the more donors you're likely to have.
Okay, so then moving out further afield, this is where we're looking at that extended network, so a little bit further outside from the community, and this is where we'd probably be a little bit more targeted in your approach as well. So thinking about, are there larger businesses with a similar focus to your project? So if you were doing the sensory garden, you might look to approach obviously garden-based companies. If you were doing a shade sale or something like that, think about health MBF or health funds. They often have foundations to support, and you can link it back to that sun safety, and so thinking about what is my project and how can I make it really interesting and fit in with the objectives of the business that I'm trying to approach, because they're more likely to support if they can see a connection as well. And there are also a lot of situations where employees in companies, they will be able to nominate where to make a donation as well. So if you do have people that work in larger businesses, they might be able to ask that the funds go to the local school. Not-for-profit organisations, so there are a lot of charities and not-for-profits around that offer support. So for example, Schools Plus, we have the fundraising platform. We also have some grants available, or it might be if you're wanting to do a breakfast program, thinking about Food Bank or First Bite. Second Bite, sorry.
Yeah, Oz Harvest.
Oz Harvest. Those not-for-profits that do breakfast programs. So having a think about that. Business chamber, that's also another good one. So going online and having a look at your local business chamber, and they often have a list of businesses in the local area that are members, and you can take that list to your team and say, hey guys, does anyone know anyone that works at this company, or at least is beginning of a target campaign of who you can approach for support.
And you could reach out. So have a look at what the education department have on at the moment. I think I saw today that the Victorian school building program, I think it's called, they actually have a grant round for shade sales. So I know a few schools are interested in shade sales. Sorry, Beth just got it up. It's the Victorian School Building Authority. Have a look.
The Department of Health and Services
and Human
Services. So if you're based in Victoria
and you want shade sales, get onto that.
There's a grant available, but you got to apply 8 days. It closes on the 28th of August.
Feel free to reach out. We'll give you contact details at the end if you can't find that one, but that's a great opportunity. Grants are, as we've said, are a great opportunity to get larger sums into your school. Keeping an eye out. We'll give you a list of some grant websites and things like that in a few slides' time. And then your alumni community, if you're just, if you've got a Facebook page for your alumni or a LinkedIn page or something like that, have a go and have ask them if they would be interested in supporting or coming in and volunteering, that kind of thing.
Alrighty. So how are you going to reach them? So you've had some ideas, you're thinking, yep, I've got my list. And look, there are multiple ways that you can reach potential donors. We've popped a few options here, and be creative. Include a notice in your newsletter. If you have a regular newsletter, you could, as the start of your campaign, you could announce what it is that you're fundraising for, and you can keep updating throughout the terms. If you've achieved a certain amount of money that's able to buy a certain amount of things, that you're able to share that and continue to keep it relevant for your school audience.
And share the message on your school's social media page. There could be people on there that might be looking to give, but it's also a great opportunity for your friends, for your families to share the message. Just make sure they know how beneficial it's going to be for their students, and then they'll be a great advocate. As we say again, apply for grants. There could be some really great grant opportunities available. Linda, we saw your question and we're just tracking down that information for you, which we'll pass on as soon as possible. And then a really great way to connect with people is to give them a call. It communicates your passion. It lets you explain the project in more detail. I know it can be a bit daunting. I'm a millennial and I do not like calling people on the phone, but just pick up the phone and give it a go. Include a story on your website with the donate button if you're using the Schools Plus Fundraise Yourself platform. You can link directly to that from the website. And also, if your project is spreading by word of mouth, the first places people are going to check are your school website and your Facebook. They might hear, our school, this local school's raising money for a sensory garden. We think that would be really great for everybody in the community. We want to give. I'll check out their Facebook page, or I'll check out their website for a bit more information. If they don't know exactly where to go, have a link on there, and that will be a great way for them to find it.
Definitely.
It's a difficult time, but if you're part of a business group or a community group, local Rotary, and they're holding virtual events, can you get on the agenda? Can you get some of your students on the agenda to talk about the project and what it would mean to them?
And getting in touch with your local Rotary or Lions Club, and just seeing what they do. They do have money allocated that they do donate to local causes, in particular to schools as well. And often they ask you to present at their meetings. Obviously that isn't happening everywhere, so reach out to your local Rotary and see how can you share your story with them about what you're doing. Email a message so it can be shared easily, particularly if you are doing a crowdfunding option. Have that link in there so people can click straight away and make that donation while it's there. And send more than one email. Don't be afraid to send a couple of emails. Space it out, obviously, but if you don't hear back from people, that doesn't mean that they're not interested. It might just mean that they haven't read it, or they're like, oh yeah, I'll get back to that, and they forget. So just follow them up. And of course, if they opt out or they tell you I'm not interested, well, that's no. But don't be afraid to send a couple of emails out as follow-up as well.
Yeah, people appreciate it. We're all busy.
Yeah, exactly. And another way, if you do send an email message, or you could do it the other way around, is send a card. So you could send a card first, bit of cut through. People don't get mail that often, and especially a great card that it could be designed by your students, bring a bit of life into it, reflect what it is you're trying to fundraise for, and follow up with an email and say, hey, I hope you received the card. This is what we're trying to do, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of great ways, and thinking about who it is you're trying to connect with and tailoring that messaging and that approach to who that is. So if it's a business, you might do the email card option. Obviously a media release is a great way as well. If it's the school or your school community, that newsletter, and see if your local MP and businesses are on the newsletter email address. I know sometimes a lot of people within the community do receive that newsletter from the school, just so they can keep in touch with what's happening at the school. So having that included is a great way to reach them as well. And they might hear about it from multiple sources, which isn't a bad thing too, because
it's good to have a reminder.
Yeah, they might think, oh yeah, I did see that, I must action it.
Yeah, so what is it? People need to see something 3 times before they do something about it. And a little fun fact, so we've been collecting data on donations from the beginning of the crowdfunding that we've been doing, and we found that people are most generous on Thursdays. So think about sharing your message on a Thursday, maybe a social media post or an email blast on a Thursday, and see how that goes, or the night before, a Wednesday night. People will get that on the Thursday, and
particularly with the social media as well. When do you most check social media? So when do you think people are going to be on that, Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be? Is it on the way home from work? Is it 8 o'clock after they've had dinner? So have a think about that too. Alrighty. So just diving a little bit deeper into the grant writing tips here. So has anyone had any success with grants in the past, or looking at applying for grants at the moment? We'd love to hear from you. Look, there's lots of grants out, and people are looking at supporting. Everyone's in crisis mode, and lots of organizations do have grants available. So our first tip would be to really think about researching. So we've had someone, Leanne has had success, as has Kate, and feel free to jump in, Kate and Leanne, or anyone who's had any experience, and share some of the tips that have worked for you. So just thinking about your grant maker. So you found a grant, excellent. Do your research who it is. What do they stand for? Does that match with your ethos as the school and what you're trying to do? Read the guidelines. Make sure you take time to have a look at the website, read through the guidelines. They might have a video or a webinar that they're hosting to talk through the grant. Join that. See, research and find out as much as you can. Look, often those guidelines, they develop them to help you. They put in those, often they have the questions in there with some guidance around it. They'll have useful information about the funding goals, what they will and won't fund, the size of grant that's available, who they've supported previously. So that'll help you target your application better. And we also advise, give the grant maker a call, pick up the phone, have a conversation with them, and ask some questions and say, look, this is what we're thinking, would this fit? And I know from our experience, we have schools call us and want to get, some feedback on what they're thinking. And we're more than happy to talk through ideas or help shape that thinking around the project. And of course, answer questions. And, with other grant makers, that could be the difference between being accepted or not. So, they'll recognize your application as it comes in. I think thinking about researching that grant maker and getting as much background as you can. Make sure you're eligible. There will be eligibility criteria on every grant that's available. Is it they're restricting around what they can fund, so they may not be able to fund equipment, and that's what you want money for. So you might need to reshape your application or your budget items to suit that.
It could be location specific.
They're only after a certain area or state.
Yeah, like that Victorian grant we mentioned before. It's only for Vic schools. So it's a waste of time if you're not eligible.
Yeah, that's right. And I think also thinking about some grant makers do require what's called the DGR status, deductible gift recipient status, which schools don't have, but that's why Schools Plus is here. We hold that DGR on behalf of schools, so we are able to support applications that you want to put in to grant makers that do require that DGR status. So please reach out to us to talk about that. So be clear, concise, compelling, and specific. So this is where, again, having that project plan is really going to help you with your grant, because you put the hard work in at the top to think about what it is exactly that you're after. So answer the questions directly and clearly, and be specific as possible. And I can see here Kate's offered some advice as well around demonstrating you're able to fund the project as much as possible, and stressing the benefit for the community. So that comes into that compelling element of the grant as well. So be specific. So for instance, you know, say our aim is to increase student attendance from 65% to 80%. That's better than saying we aim to increase student attendance, because it's showing that you've got that baseline data, you're going to be measuring it, and you're going to show what it's going to look like at the end of the project, and what that might be. You know, and if you are doing you know, a shade sale, for example, it could be, well, obviously currently we don't have one, and by the end of the project we will, but you want to also think about what's that benefit going to be for your students. So think beyond just the practicalities of just having a structure, but what is it that's really going to benefit? You know, you're going to be listing your beneficiaries. It might be assemblies, it might be a gathering place, it might be, you know, the outdoor lessons. So you're using it,
sun safety.
Yeah, what is it that you're going to be using that for? So that's all part of that compelling story. And explain the current situation and the need. So again, if you're looking at that shade sale, currently we're in a very remote location. We don't have a shaded area for our assemblies, for our students to meet and gather, etc., etc. Why you've chosen the approach, what activities you'll undertake, who's going to benefit. So just thinking about all of that sort of stuff as well. Importantly as well, avoid using acronyms or jargon. Think about, you know, write for the layperson. Assume they have no idea, well, they don't, what your context of the school is. They have no idea what program it is that you're looking to put in. So really write it. Don't use, you know, acronyms for programs or products. Spell that out. Don't use the jargon, and make it really clear. So the budget, so include a clear and thorough budget, and Kate made a point above as well about including in there the funds that you're going to contribute. So some applications will ask that, and again, that's where your hard work in your project plan comes into play. You've already listed out the other elements of where you're sourcing funding. I know in our grant application we ask that question. We say, you know, what's the total amount you need for, you know, the cost of the project, and where are you finding the funds to make that shortfall up of what we can provide. You know, they want to know exactly where their money is going to be spent. So be specific about the budget items. You know, explain the equipment that's going to be purchased, rather than just laptops. Go, you know, it's 12 laptops, it's 10 iPads, it's, you know, 30 textbooks. Or if it's funding for salaries or teacher release, it could be, you know, 5 days at $400, you know, a day, or whatever it might be. And also making sure your budget matches the activities that you've outlined in your application. So there is that flow through effect, and you're telling that story. And by the time they reach the budget section, they've got a really clear idea about how that fits into what it is that you want to raise, what you want the funding for. I had an example, an application I was reading today, where they told a great story, and then I got down to the budget and it said, you know, we want money for coaching. And I was like, where in the application did they talk about coaching? There was no mention of it anywhere else, and I couldn't quite fit how, you know, how that worked. So, you know, really thinking about that flow and how it is worked. And key part, submit the application on time. So, you know, as we know, computers aren't always our friends at key parts of time. So make sure that you are prepared. You're starting the application early. You're checking what that close date is. you're checking the time as well. You know, if you're in another state as where the grant maker is, you know, there could be a time difference and you could miss that close cutoff. You know, check that. Put in that time to really prepare, and don't leave it to the last minute. You know, we have had that situation a few times. Oh, the internet went down, or we had a fire at the school, or, you know, so be prepared and get that in early. And what we are seeing as well at the moment is that a lot of grant makers are, as we mentioned before, are granting out, you know, before the cutoff date. So they are understanding that need and that sense of urgency around getting funding into schools. So they're assessing applications all throughout that time that grant round is open. So the earlier you can get your grant application in, you know, it's got a better chance of being assessed and looked at.
Yeah, we had an anonymous question come in about hiring a professional grant writer, and so if you are eligible for the Support of Schools Plus, if you're using our grant service, your grant will be actually looked at by our donor team and by myself, and we've all had experience applying for grants, so essentially we can be your help there. It would only be if you've got the budget, I would say, to hire it, or if it's pro bono,
or if the grant you're applying for is a considerable amount of money, and the questions or the information that you need to supply is quite detailed and complex. So it would probably be a case-by-case situation. There are online short courses that you can do to get tips yourself. So training up within your team has that sustainability as well, because you can use those skills for other grants that you're filling in. We had another question: can you apply only once for a grant? Look, for our grant, I mean, this will be different, but I would say majority of the time it would be, yes, you can only apply once. So it, you know, in particular for ours, it is one school that can apply, and that could be the P&C applying on behalf of the school, or it could be the principal or the project lead, but only once they can apply. And that will be in the guidelines as well. So again, reading those guidelines and just seeing if there are parts to it that are restrictive. And if they're not in the guidelines, call them and ask that question, because that's a great reason to get in touch with them as well.
All right, so moving on. So these are some websites that you can use to find grants. It can be a bit of a challenge to find grants because there's so many available and, you know, all over the place. So here are some websites that we've had success with. There are 2 that are free, and then 2 that are paid, but with a 14-day free trial, so you can give them a go. We use the Grants Hub at Schools Plus and have found that to be a very useful tool. So have a go and take a screenshot, but at the end you will be sent a copy of the slides. Okay, so if you're lucky enough to receive a donation, it's a really great idea to say thank you, not only to, you know, show your appreciation, but also it can help the donors stay engaged. And if you've got a project coming up in the future, they might like to give again. So depending on the level of the thank you, you can vary how much you give them. So you could put together a thank you card. You know, your principal could give them a call or send them an email. You could put together videos and photos, and also be prepared to, if you are successful with a grant, be prepared to give back.
To report back. There will be that restriction, and again, it'll be in the guidelines, or ask about the reporting requirements. You will be, you know, check if you need to keep receipts, if there's data measures that you need to be including. So that's a key thing to think about there.
Yeah, so to sum up this part, don't be afraid to apply for grants or ask people for a donation. There's a ratio that we use in fundraising, which is 8-4-1. So you'll approach 8 people, 4 people will be interested, and 1 person will donate. So you'll have essentially 7 people that have said no, but that no isn't no forever. That's just a no for now. So, you know, they might still be interested in the project, but they just don't have the means to give at the moment. So keep them updated, keep them engaged, and, you know, they might make a donation in the future.
Alrighty, now to the last part.
Yeah, so we're going to quickly drive through our Fundraise Yourself platform. As we've said, this is for eligible schools, and it's a crowdfunding tool that you can use to raise funds for projects. So I'm going to share something that I prepared earlier. I'm going to jump over to our Schools Plus website. So you should now be seeing our Schools Plus website. When you arrive on the Schools Plus website, which is schoolsplus.org.au, you'll see these tabs up the top. Head to the For Schools option here. You can read more about the program here, but jump over to School Login Register. You'll see here some information and registration guidelines. Have a read of those guidelines. They've got some great information in there and things you'll need to accept before your project can go ahead. Once you've done that, click register here. Ticking all of these. You'll select all of the eligible schools are actually preloaded into our system. So you'll click on that one and it will appear as you can go to the next button when that's available. That's just taking a little bit of time there.
Doesn't, oh yeah.
Yep.
So it doesn't go on chat this long.
No. So you'll fill in your school information, which is contact details, you know, your school email address, principal information, which is another great reason to have your principal aware because they're going to receive an email that you've signed up. If you're not the principal, an alternative, your details as the alternative contact, and then bank account information. If you're a school in New South Wales, you don't need to fill this in. There'll be a button here for the central banking system, which you'll tick. And then once you are registered, you'll submit that and you will arrive to your school dashboard, which is something we've logged into before. So here you'll see a dashboard, your account details, any projects you've already started will be listed here, budget details and resources. So in this resources tab is where you'll find, you know, the project plan, media release templates, that kind of thing. But we'll just quickly go into this create a project part. So again, you'll be adding in contact details.
And this is where that project planning again comes into play.
Exactly.
Because you're able to fill this in a little bit easier.
Yeah, the amount, so you'll know exactly how much you need, you'll know your beneficiaries, how many students, how many teachers, your dates. See, it really does plug in nicely to all of these areas. We highly recommend adding photos and video to your project. It makes it much more engaging. You can add donation levels. For example, $20 will buy, you know, 1 plant, $50 will buy a shovel, you know, that kind of thing. Adding in budget information here of how the funds will be spent when you have them. And then clicking through here that you authorize and you've read the guidelines, submit for review, and then that will come through to school to us, or myself, and we will review. All right, so back to the PowerPoint, and then this is what it will look like. This is one from Chifley Public School that they've raised. So they've got a nice photo there, a great project description, your donation levels down the side, and you'll be able to see how much is raised. So the 3 steps to get started: head over to schoolsplus.org.au, consult with us and register your project, and then start spreading the word.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like just get it out there and start sharing. You can amend it along the way.
So we've got a couple of opportunities. We've talked about the grant program through Schools Plus. So at the moment, we've got 2 opportunities that are open till the 11th of September. So our first one is our Smart Giving program, and that's nationally, so across Australia, for projects starting in Term 1 or Term 4. These need to be strategic projects. So we wouldn't encourage shade cloths, basketball upgrade, playground upgrades, things like that. It needs to be projects that are focused on whole school change, or, really strategic, linking back to your school plan. The second one we have that's currently open is for New South Wales schools only, and it is a focus around family and community engagement. So that is one that has that strict restriction on it. Again, both of these have guidelines with lots of great information. So please go onto the website, schoolsplus.org.au, to find out more about them. Honor has popped in the web links there for directing you straight to those grant opportunities. And finally, we have our Teaching Awards, Commonwealth Bank Teaching Awards, which is opening on the 14th of September. And that's an opportunity to recognise and reward all our outstanding teachers and school leaders in our schools. And we know, especially now, how hard everyone works. So a really great opportunity to recognise that. So yes, that wraps up our session with 1 minute over. So yeah, sorry about that. But please get in touch.
My contact details, or our contact details, are here. Honor's popped some links in there. If you don't want to go to any of those links, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn.
We're always popping up our opportunities through our social media, so please like us on all the socials, and you'll be across all of those, and sign up to our newsletter as well, and you'll get all our opportunities. So thank you so much for everyone being involved, and thank you for all the activity and questions that you sent through. It's really a great session, so thank you. But get in touch if you've got other questions.
Yes,
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.